Hi, my name is Susie Wheeler, and I'm part of the Chicago Dance History Project.
Great.
My name is Alida Szabo, and I'm part of the Dance History Project.
I'm Carol Doty, and this is the Chicago Dance History Project.
I'm Toby Nicholson, and this is part of the Chicago Dance History Project.
And I'm Tain Balfour, and this is part of the Chicago Dance History Project.
Wonderful. How are the sounds? You want to go again? Or you good?
Adjectives mixed
We're
up.
good. We're good. So thank you all for being here. Again, this is conversational, so anyone who wants to speak up or redirect, I'm just going to sort of offer some questions as places to start. But I'd love for anyone to speak about their relationship to Sybil and how they ended up here. Introduce us to yourself and your relationship to both Sybil and Helen as well, if that is part of your narrative.
Okay, somebody said I should start.
Yes.
So I'll start. Helen Balfour Morrison was my aunt, so I've known Sybil since I can remember. She was just always sort of part of my life. In fact, this house is where my parents were married. And the house had just completed and my parents were married here. And I can remember coming out here and dancing on the lawn. I also remember I did take dancing lessons when I was about 5 with Sybil at the Winnetka Community House, yes. And so as I said, that's how I was named to the board, because I'm a relative. And I'll think of things later to add.
Wonderful.
Maybe, hopefully.
Well, I sort of to segue from that, when I was in college, Sybil saw me in a production at Northwestern and just spoke to me afterwards and said, come out and audition for me. And the audition was a steak dinner at the studio. I'd never danced, but she sort of saw me in a production and thought I could move. And that was in 1960. So I've been associated with the Morrison-Shearer projects and company ever since.
What was the production?
Don Juan in Hell. I was the devil, and I danced and I flipped and did. I took Don Juan down to hell.
There you go. Wonderful.
No wonder she was impressed. I'm Carol Doty, and I didn't know Sybil until she was 80. We got connected through a mutual interest in the landscape architect Jens Jensen, who was a good friend of both Helen and Sybil. I was curator of the Jensen collection at the Morton Arboretum, and so I knew there was a dancer named Sybil Shearer who used to take her dancers to the clearing in the 1940s. And other Jensen scholars that came to use the research were also aware of her, but none of us thought to think that she was around somewhere. And then Bob Gracie from the University of Michigan was doing a book on Jensen. And he found Sybil and called me immediately and said, oh, this is so exciting, you've got to meet her. And I wanted her, at that time I was affiliated with the Friends of the Clearing Jensen School in Door County. And I wanted her to come up and speak to one of our meetings. And I think it was at least a year before she finally came. She was busy. And we met up there, and she and I sat up late at night. That's something she did. I never did, but I did that night. And before I knew it, she was just kind of gathering me into her circle. And here I am.
That's great. I've been involved in the performing arts community for many decades. And at the time I met Sybil was in the early 80s. Helen had passed, so I didn't meet Helen. I think she had just incorporated the Morrison-Shearer Foundation around that time. I was director of marketing and PR at the Goodman Theater, and I was producing a dance series there, the Merrill Lynch dance series. So somehow she just called me out of the blue and started asking me questions I think she just incorporated. And we had back and forth conversations for a while. I have to confess I did not know who she was. And there was no internet then for me to look her up. So we went back and forth for a while, and then she wanted to present this German soloist named Susanne Linke Linka, and which was, I realized later, very interesting because she was a solo performer herself, but the fact that she had such an attachment to this particular artist, and she wanted to present it at the Goodman, but I helped get her something at the New Washington Library. They had just opened and had an auditorium, and I recommended her to them and them to her, and she brought in Susanna and presented her there. I think that was the first thing she presented as part of the Morrison-Shearer Foundation at that time. She just kept inviting me up for tea, I remember, and it was embarrassing how many times I was busy or didn't go, and so I finally thought, okay, I have to do this. And do you mind if I bring my husband? My husband is a film editor, or was a producer and film editor and a musician, and I trust his instinct beyond reproach. So I asked her, can I bring my husband, because I thought he would have a good sense of who she was. And so we came up here on a Sunday, and indeed we had tea. And she then brought out the Helen's portrait portfolio, and my husband was totally blown away as a filmmaker. It's just like, oh my God, this is incredible. And so we were driving back down to the city, and I turned to him, I said, well, what'd you think? And he looked at me and he said, well, I think you're going to do whatever she asks you to do. And I did, and became a member of the board.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we all do whatever Sybil asks us. I've known Sybil all my life too, because I had an affiliation with one of the people in, I don't know, would you want to say the original company with Masao?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Masao.
And who has passed away, but I mean, he would be 91 years old now, so, and began dancing with her. Yeah, they were all contemporaries, my parents with him. I grew up at a children's camp, and he helped run it along with my parents, so he was absolutely part of my family. So I always knew about Sybil. My parents always went to everything, concerts and that sort of thing. And I remember seeing in where he lived, like those costumes hanging in the closet, and from all those different costumes, which you know them well. I mean, we all do kind of by now. But so I danced. I was in love with dance. I was a little kid in the woods. I danced with Masao, and then Sybil formed a group of people, which Sue Balea is also part of, also on the board. And I want to say I was in high school, and we went to your ballet master would give classes, Lee Wallace, and it was at Northwestern, National College of Education, where she was the artist in residence there in the theater, which is a theater you guys performed in. So we were young, and we were in high school, and we would go to Evanston, and we would be in these ballet classes. And then Sybil kind of worked us into being a group of people that she used to document her dances on film. And we did that all at the studio. And so we worked on so all those film snippets that they have at the Chicago Dance Archives is, there's the old company, there's the new company, there's mixtures, because Toby always danced with us. And so, I don't know, Sybil's just always been in my life, and Helen, too. Of course, I was scared to death of Helen, because you had to sit up straight and be very good and proper around Helen.
What was
And
the
if you
name of
accidentally went like this on a chair, oh boy, that couch, oh boy. But anyway, she was awesome. What
was the name of the camp that Masao was?
Camp Reinberg out in Palatine, serving kids from the inner city, and also as a environmental center. So I don't know, I have a kind of strange background with that, but I mean, I have tons to say, but now I'm going to stop because I'm talking too much.
No, not at all.
I was going to say something because we focused on Sybil, but we should mention Helen, who was my aunt. A little background, which my father was also a photographer, and the two of them started their own business back many years ago, and then they went their separate ways because my father had to earn money to support his family. And he became a portrait photographer, and she became a portrait photographer in a different way. And she did contact different people and do their portraits. And so there's quite an extensive portfolio of her photographs.
Famous
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And
Any
Famous
important
people.
person in the 20th century pretty much.
And I
sat
have to
for
say,
her.
and my father photographed anybody who was famous and was willing to pay what, you know, like the Wrigleys and the people like that who had, back in those days, women had debuts and fancy weddings. Well, I guess they still do today, but whatever. So they were both photographers, but went, you know, their separate ways.
Do you have any of your dad's?
I
Do you have
do.
your dad's archive?
Well, in Arizona, I have some of his old bridal portraits.
Oh, cool.
Do you have a sense of, or do you know how Sybil and Helen met?
I can't remember. In New York,
Yes.
maybe?
no, I think out here in Chicago.
I think
They
Helen
met
saw
at-
her dance.
They met in
Yeah.
Chicago. There was
Oh, in Chicago.
an organization that had a program, and Sybil was in it. And Helen met her then and was very impressed and came up and spoke with her afterwards. And before long, they became friends, and Sybil asked Helen to do her lighting. And Helen said, oh, I could never do that. And,
She did.
And Sybil wept, I guess, or something. Anyway, it ended up that she soon became her lighting director, and then pretty soon her manager, and eventually pretty much everything.
And at that point, Sybil was already living?
Sybil came here at the age of 30. She had gone to Skidmore College. She wanted to be a dancer, but her father said, you have to go to college. So she just graduated from Skidmore the spring before the Bennington School project opened for the first time, and she went there. And she went there for several summers, but her father by then agreed to give her enough money to live in New York for a year. And so she became established. And so she was there until she moved here when she was 30. One of the things she had done was to go around to high schools and colleges and just give a presentation about dance to interest people in modern dance. And she had been to Chicago. She had been here on tour with Agnes DeMille, and I think Agnes for sure. And the president,
Humphrey Weidman too, probably.
maybe with Humphrey Weidman as well. But I know definitely with Agnes DeMille. And the president of what was then the YMCA College of Chicago saw her and remembered her, and I think she probably spoke at that college. So he invited her to come to Chicago and teach at that college. And it was right after the war, and the trustees of that college wanted to have names of all of the Jewish people and the black people and all, and it was clear he was going to start segregating things. And so the president of the college said, no, we're leaving, and the whole faculty, with the exception of one person, I don't know who that was, left and formed what became Roosevelt College. So Sybil was among those faculty members that went with him, and she therefore is one of the founding faculty members of Roosevelt College, now Roosevelt University. But Helen, I think, was out and about a lot because she was always looking for people that she was going to take pictures of, and so she heard about this dancer. She already had a reputation in New York and went to see her, and then that was the beginning of it.
So Sybil was already living in Chicago.
For a short time, she had just come here.
She debuted in New York City at Carnegie Hall in 1941 to rave reviews, and once she was established in New York, she felt she didn't need to really stay there and wanted to come out with a little more open spaces.
Right. Can any of you speak to that need for open space and the founding of the house and the studio and both how that may have influenced the dance making and the filmmaking, but also Sybil and Helen's relationship?
Well, I can say the house was built before Sybil and Helen met. As I said, my parents were married here. They somehow got Seifert as the architect. I don't know how they connected with him, but the house was built, and Sybil was not even involved in their life then. And I just want to add and give credit to my Uncle Bob, my aunt's husband, who was a wonderful man. He's sort of, what wouldn't you say, held the glue that held them all together and had a
Gave
balance.
her the capability to have
Yeah,
her.
and, right, because Sybil
Helen's-
came to be a part of their life, which was in some ways very intrusive. I mean, they were married and suddenly this third person comes into their life. And he was a wonderful man. I think he provided some balance to the relationship and the whole ambiance and everything, because they could get a little, my aunt could get a little carried away sometimes, I think.
Can you tell us a little more about Bob?
Well, and he owned this whole street.
Did he?
All the property here, and so he sold Sybil a plot of land
Right, oh, that's
down
right,
the
you're right.
street.
Yeah,
And-
just
Where
he
the
and my
studio
aunt
is.
met in Evanston, I think when they were like maybe teenagers, I don't know. And they got married, and I don't know how they got, do you know how they got out here? I don't, does anybody, I don't.
She once, Sybil once mentioned that I think it was after her parents passed away, she came into a little bit of money, and that's when she built the studio. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
she did, but that
Oh,
was, that
Sybil,
was
you're talking
19.
about.
Sybil,
Oh,
yeah.
Sybil, yeah, but
Sybil.
I don't know about
Well,
this,
but
why
Sybil
they bought
also,
this.
right, there seems to be some misunderstanding about where the money came from. One reason that Sybil was able to operate the way she did, with not performing until she felt ready, and maybe having one or two performances and never having one again until another year later, she's got something totally new, not what you would expect. And you would see that, and then it would be gone. Well, this is not typical. People that have to be supporting themselves in
Right.
dance are out there doing it day after day, night after night, and
She had the gift of not having to do
she
that.
had the
She was
gift of.
financially independent.
Well, she had some money from her, we inherited money, the foundation did, from her mother, who had some stock that had never been sold and had accumulated. But Sybil told me one time, she said Helen was a millionaire in her own right. She did make money from photography. And she made it and she apparently paid quite a bit of the cost of building the studio.
I would challenge that, but
Well,
I can't imagine she made that much money that many years ago
Well,
from,
the person who told me this, some of this, is someone who knew her quite well.
Okay.
And I know, I just know she told me that Helen was a self-made millionaire.
Well,
Sybil told me
but
that.
Bob was a professional too.
my uncle
so
worked
he-
for Collier's Magazine,
Yes,
and
He
then
was
he
in
retired.
advertising,
And he built this log cabin out there, I don't know if you've seen it, but he was the one that built the log cabin out there, and
That was his printing press. There was a printing press in there.
But the dance company wasn't a lucre, were never paid. I know, Toby, you talked about this.
We made $25 every time we performed.
oh,
Wow.
You know, maybe once a year, or no, we all had day jobs, but
Which was part of her thing at that time, right?
yeah.
I'll just jump in and say this, that her idea was that she wanted people who, we did all have day jobs, and we'd come out here, you know, I mean, in my incarnation of the company, we'd come out here every, 3 times a week, or
Do you want
sometimes
to
more?
stop until she fixes
Do you want
it?
us to
Yeah.
stop?
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Seems like a good story.
I know, it is kind of explanation about why she used what she did.
Do we need an extension cord? Is that the issue?
It just got hot.
Oh, yeah. Do you wanna grab a chair while we're pausing?
No, we're okay. We're just getting a little residual sound from all the chairs creaking.
And the floor?
Nobody creep.
It's ambiance.
Sit
I think.
still.
Ambiance.
Yeah.
I don't think I can sit still.
Yeah, no.
It's the sound of history.
Dancing.
Creaking.
Yeah.
Pardon the
Chair.
break, everyone.
As soon as you
Thank you.
leave.
Yeah. All right, so 3 times a week.
Okay, so the idea was that her dancers weren't dancers by trade. I mean, now it is a whole different world with people who are dancers. I feel that when I see them, hate to say it, but being able to perform one of the dances, it possibly took us a year to get to the point where she was willing to have Helen come down and film us. You know, Toby's taught people in about a week or 2 weeks. You know, but anyway, I don't even want to go into that. But we weren't. Our day job wasn't 8 hours a day working in a studio with our bodies. But she was really particular. If you did something like accidentally told her that you rode a bike for 5 miles, she'd be like, "Oh, no! You have to. This is what you do with your body. What I tell you to do is what you do." And so we did, and she trained us all. There was a ballet foundation for our training, and then she worked with us as far as putting her stamp on us, I guess I'll say. And I mean, it was just a huge gift for me, but her idea was that people brought something into her dances with the interpretation, I guess I'll say, from their own really different lives. Like, we all had really different lives outside of dancing for the company.
When Susie says it's stamp on you, the thing that Sybil told me that she felt she contributed to the dance world was that she freed movement. That so many modern dancers did have a stamp, and that if you were a Martha Graham dancer, you learned the vocabulary, and you were going to see a lot of those same movements in every dance that she did. Whereas every time Sybil did a dance, it was a whole new vocabulary, and we would learn a new set of things for that particular dance, which always kind of put us behind the 8 ball, because it was like we were starting over every time.
But that was part of her thing, I think, too.
Oh, of course.
To put us
yes.
behind the 8 ball. Because you were, you had to learn something. And it was all very, I think I'll say spiritual, in the sense that I know she believed that we were to take, and I mean, she, as a solo dancer, I'm not talking about that. That was something, the caliber of her solo dances is beyond words, but our company work was, we were supposed to, take the energy basically from the universe in and then give it back out to you as the audience member. So there was all this exchange of energy, and way before everyone talks about that now, no big deal. We have rocks we carry around of our, everyone talks about it, but that was before that wasn't normal vocabulary in everybody's world like it kind of is now. And it was how, I don't know, I guess I'll say the basis of, she had the lyrical movement and the give and take and the balance, and that's how all of our training was, where we warmed up with something that was all about the energy went out, the energy came back, it went this way, it went that way, and we did that before we started any rehearsal. And that was sort of, I'm probably being horribly redundant, I'm not saying the right words, that was like very important to her and us. Mm-hmm. That were your feet, the energy went down into the ground, and your feet just weren't like things that hung at the end of your leg and flapped around, and you got in really bad trouble for that, I'm telling you. She did not like that, because you were part of the earth, and she was very earthy. And you ask why she came to the Midwest, and she talks about the winds of the Midwest and how it was free, which is exactly how her dance was. By stamp, I didn't mean that as a bad thing. The stamp of freedom.
No, right.
Well, we get this question quite often of how can we teach her style? And I say, let's not go there. There is no Sybil Shearer style to be taught. It was change and growth all the time. A sort of funny thing, I used to take her to the dentist and other places, and we had a long drive down there, and one day she was saying, she was near the end of her life, we didn't know that, and she was kind of querying me all the time. What do you think is my main purpose, my main focus? And I kept trying to say things. I would say dance and blah, blah, blah. And finally she says, movement, with great emphasis. And
She wanted to make sure
I've never
you knew
forgotten
that.
it, movement with great emphasis.
Yeah. Those of you that didn't necessarily dance with her, do you have experiences as an audience member that maybe, or watching the solos? What was it like to see the dance different from, those that got to experience it?
Well, I helped her, we all helped, her do a lectern at the Art Institute. And I think that's the last time I saw her really move in public. I don't know if it was the last time.
Do you know the year one?
No, but it wasn't, but it was the best thing.
Do you know when that?
92 or 3
Yeah,
years
she
old.
was-
Yeah, it was,
Like in her 90s.
yeah, but it was in 1990.
No, she was in her 80s.
She was in her
Okay.
80s, maybe 88 or something, in her late 80s.
I'll go along with me.
Anyway, she did a lectem, but towards the end of the lectem is when she started to really move, and to me that was just astonishing. I mean, she was a very captivating personality even without moving, but at the end of it she moved, and it was just magnificent to see. Now we all have these films which are great, But that was the last time I saw her move.
And we should have that film, which was made by the Art Institute and lost by the Art Institute.
She danced a bas-relief. So in other words, she started out like attached to the wall, if you will, as a bas-relief would be, and then she started moving as such.
That might be her last time.
At the Art
At
Institute.
the
That
Art
was at the
Institute in the
Institute,
small,
yeah.
in the small
Mhm.
place, yes.
In the Fullerton Theater, but I
Right.
remember the story of, there was like a knock on the door and somebody opened the door and it was like Sybil, who was about this tall, and she had on her crazy little hat, and it was kinda, they were like, oh, some little old lady's at the back door. Only it was her, and she was coming to show up to do her thing to a packed house.
Oh, I remember that. We were
Just
at the Art Institute and
Yeah.
they wouldn't let us in.
So she had to like go
She
around and
had, she had on her red rubber garden
Yeah.
boots and a coat with her hats, and they didn't believe it was the dancer. We said, she's the program, and finally they opened the door.
There was a chair on the stage, and that was, she came off the bas-relief, and it was great.
That was. And that, I remember that whole thing very well. Afterwards, people were coming up down to talk to her and meet her, and they were all hugging her and kissing her, which was something she hated. And I tapped her and said, I'm going home, I'll talk to you later. When I got home, she called me, and so I said, well, but they were all hugging and kissing you. She said, oh, what could I do?
I think she secretly liked it.
She didn't like that kind of physical contact, or she didn't like
She
them
she usually didn't like that kind of physical contact, yeah.
We were not a huggy group.
Yeah, we weren't huggy.
We weren't hugging.
We hugged each other.
Hugs came later with
I have
all
to-
the actors.
I have to retract what I just said, because I do think the last time I saw her dance was in my living room. My husband was a cook, and she loved it. And not a lot, but sometimes she'd come to a Sunday dinner, and she loved it when he did like meat and potatoes, standing rib roast. That was good. And he was a musician, a pianist, and we had a grand piano in the living room. And sometimes after dinner with an intimate group of 6, 8 friends, he would sit down and just play kind of spontaneously, and she would get up and just start moving in the living room. It was like, you know, it was just really, really special to have that kind of performance in your home. And David would just keep playing, and she would keep moving, and then he looked over his shoulder, and it was just really lovely.
She could
That's
do all her
nice.
dogs
That's
in
nice.
movement, 100%. Like she was movement. I mean, I guess she could do all of us in movement. I mean, and not like a comedian or anything, but she could, I don't know, like if she was sitting in this chair, she would all of a sudden just start moving, and it would be one of her dogs. Well, she always had German Shepherds.
And my Aunt
Dangerous
Ethel
ones.
had Irish setters.
She did all the Irish setters.
Yeah.
That's
But
what
she did talk about teaching movement, like the movement of the leaves, the movement of the wind, the movement of butterflies, whatever. And nature was very important to her. It was very important to her.
And was her choreography pre-planned, or was it an improvisational process?
Both.
Some of both.
She would do the same as for company pieces, which made it a little difficult. But that's behind the 8th ball type thing.
Well, she would
Well,
try.
I've decided you're gonna enter from that side.
But
What?
She would start a rehearsal with movement ideas, movement
Right.
phrases, and then she'd see how everybody did it, and she'd, I like what Susie did, when we'd all thought we'd done it really just perfectly, but, pick different people.
For whatever reason,
Right.
right, for whatever reason. And she choreographed a dance, okay, so I am tall and I was very thin. And a partner I had was even taller than me and probably about as thin. So she choreographed this, I don't think it ever got finished, but we'd come out on Saturdays and we'd be in the studio, and I don't know, she choreographed this tall, thin dance for us, and she put the camera like this, and we would come in and out of the camera, and there's a couple renditions of it in the film archives, but I don't know. I guess I will say this, when that was a golf course, which it was very recently, on Saturdays when you were at rehearsal, they'd be out there golfing, and all of a sudden they'd be like, a ball would come over somewhat near the studio. There's a slight berm, and they'd be like, and then suddenly there'd be like a little audience looking at you dancing in the studio. Well, you guys, I don't remember too many group rehearsals on Saturdays.
No.
But they were mostly at night, and then we used the mirrors, and we used the windows as mirrors, but That
Did
was
that
all.
little duet have a title? Her titles were so
I'm not sure if
rich
it
and
did.
layered.
That one, no, her titles were great. I don't think we ever got it finished enough to.
Who was your partner?
Jerry
What was his full name?
Lev was kind of a latecomer with the real company, and then before the film company.
He was a student of mine at New Trier,
Mhm.
and I sort of pushed him into the company.
Yep.
He was very good.
I wonder if any of that leads into conversation either about more directly the collaboration between Sybil and Helen and the films, and what your sort of distinction between the first company and the film company, and what.
Her idea with us, when we joined the second kind of group and formed that company, you guys were done kind of performing in the theater, and she was no longer the artist.
Well,
in
just
residence.
to start with, in
Okay,
the
sorry.
50s, she had an amateur company of housewives and people that just still wanted to dance, and took her classes. And then in 1959, she started a professional company with more trained dancers. And the first piece within this thicket was performed at the Winnetka Community House. I joined right after that in 1960, and then a lot of that first company left. But then there was kind of a permanent company that stayed with her. We were there for about 20 years. And then,
Yeah.
then there was the film company.
And that was when Helen would come down, when we were ready for Helen. She'd sit behind that camera. And, I mean, we had to be pretty ready, when you would say. And,
Yeah.
right? And then
Right.
the studio was a different kind of performing space, because you'd be like this close to the person and who was watching you, which was Helen through that camera. And then, she had to redo things where we were suddenly performing to a camera rather than a live audience. So sometimes she'd bring a live audience in there who were like smashed against the wall on the bench behind the camera. So that we were, I don't know, that certain energy is different with a live audience and a camera, obviously, but.
She seemed to like to have different kinds of body builds.
Mhm.
And she,
You
when
got in trouble if you were chubby.
oh yeah.
Oh, boy. She would want to roll you with a roll. I never had that. That's why I stayed so thin.
When they were actually building the studio, the carpenter became a dancer. It reminds me a little bit of Liz Lerman. She had dancing for older people. I see now what she has is dancing for everybody.
That's how she was. She'd bring the guy who was working in the yard, before you knew it, was in the company. So, I'm not that the standards weren't extremely high.
Because she always you had to have a big guy. There's
She
always
saw
a big guy.
she saw something in
Well, Johnny
people's movement.
Bankston, who built her house and
Mhm.
was the carpenter, he was a big guy,
Mm-hmm.
and she always wanted a big guy. I was part of the little guy.
The little
who-
guy, you and Mousy, were
Yeah.
little guys.
Right.
And do you have a sense of what the camera was for? Was it for documentation? Was it sort of a collaborative dance on camera? All of those?
No, I think, yeah, she wanted to
Both.
document
Yeah.
everything, and then she would look at it and say, oh, yeah, I don't like that, and the next rehearsal, we would, get something changed.
I mean, and that sense of legacy seemed, I mean, the fact that she had the foresight to create the foundation as well and bring you all together. She had a way of bringing people together strategically. I don't know, but I mean, that's a sense I get from hearing you all talk about how you ended up here.
I think I was the first non-member of her company, except for Tain.
Me.
Tain,
But
yeah.
you took
But
dance
you-
classes from her.
But you were in the family, so you're in the family where we are.
But I think she had
Beyond.
a need to have somebody who knew about the arts administration world, the not-for-profit world, out beyond this wall. And so I think that was a need that she thought I filled. So I was the first, and you were probably the second. I don't know.
And Sarah.
Oh, no,
David.
Sarah
No.
and John.
Oh, David.
And
Don't forget about
after
David.
Yeah,
Sarah.
but we all came in at the same time.
Yeah.
John, Sarah,
What
and
are their
myself.
last names?
I'll give you a list.
But the original board was, a lot of them have passed away, but those were all
People were
dancers.
dead.
Tain,
Well, not
Toby.
Jim Cunningham wasn't. the
Jim,
dancer.
but
he
he
was
was
her sound person.
Yeah.
Sound person.
So he worked with her as an
Someone-
artist.
right.
Yeah.
And composer Jim Cunningham
Yeah, he was a
composed a
composer,
piece,
that's right.
and
his chair.
Musician.
Yeah.
we danced to.
Mhm.
You did?
We miss them.
And while Sybil seemed to have a clear idea of sort of legacy and preserving her work, how do you guys feel about what's the importance of her work today, and why are you doing the work you're doing on the board?
It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma in
We're
that.
working on that.
It's a dilemma in that Sybil's dances are very hard to truly dance by on another body, wouldn't you say?
I mean, especially
Prob-
her solo.
Solos.
The
solos.
solos, the solos. Probably literally impossible, but people are making the effort and some are coming close. We recognize that if you don't have any performances, things die and fade away. So we have to keep figuring this out, but it is difficult.
And dance is intangible. I mean, a film is not a dance.
No, it's not.
I mean, sorry, no offense to film, but it's just true. I mean, that's the beauty of dance, is it's in the air.
You know, I think it's less vital and probably maybe a disservice to Sybil to try to recreate her dances. But I do think what the foundation seeks to do is to promote into the future that spirit of creativity and that standard of excellence. There's a lot of creativity or things that pass for creativity out there in the world, but combine that with a standard of excellence. And I think for the dance, later in Sybil's life, she became a critic and she wrote for Ballet Review, and she was pretty critical
She was
of what
real
she
critical,
saw.
yeah.
And you almost didn't want to take her to something, at times, but I think that was her way. Once she stopped dancing and engaging with a company, that was her way of keeping this, what her ideas were moving forward.
You know what though? You just jogged my memory about something that I think is really true, is that Helen was sort of the outside man, if you will, for Sybil's work, in the sense that, and then when Helen died, Sybil had to be that, and that's when she became a critic and wrote for the Ballet Review. But before that, Sybil was sort of, I'm gonna say insulated, but I sort of, like her creativity was like a golden ball that, Helen just really helped.
She was protected.
Yes, and so that was, I believe that was why Sybil was kind of able to do what she did, with as well as like never having to actually like work at Walmart and check out, do a job like that. So she had that gift.
Or become married. She was proposed to, but
Right.
said no.
Ran. She'll tell you that story.
She just wanted to be a dancer.
Right.
And that was the whole thing.
He had the suggestion, made a comment, and she just started running. That was the funny story about that. But anyway, I feel like she was able to do what she did because of first her own circumstance, and then Helen was, definitely, and Bob allowed Helen to do that.
But
So it
taking
all
off,
facilitated.
taking off of what you're saying, maybe once Helen passed, creating the foundation became that for her as well.
Right.
They became the connectivity to the outside world and the ability to promote her idea of excellence and creativity.
And it's
Except
in
the
3
fact-
books.
And the books.
We have
And the
published
books. Right.
2 of the
Two of the
books,
3.
and the 3rd is
In process.
In my basement.
But also she considered us family.
Mhm.
And when there was work to be done, you were out here and you were collecting leaves or whatever the heck she wanted you to do. You were here. You were helping make composting dirt and planting and
I mowed a lot of lawns. there.
exactly, shoveling off the studio roof in the snow, and we would honestly have done anything she wanted us to do.
The last 10 or 15 years of her life that I knew her, she went to see a lot of dance.
Mm-hmm.
She did go to see a lot of dance. I don't know how much she did while she was a working artist, but she was, and not just to review necessarily, she just went to see a lot of things. And then as she got older, I'd make her drive to my house and leave her car there, and I
Oh,
would
God.
take her downtown. And
Yeah,
be like,
I'm
I think I'll take us to the auditorium.
driving
Why don't
was
just
a
make
little
it to my house.
Sat out of hellish.
Horrible drive.
She was like, bam, in this giant car.
Oh
and
my
she would
God,
just
yes.
like, boom.
Yeah, I
I
wasn't
took-
worried about her. It was whoever she would She's
I-
in
I-
a tank.
I took her to
Driving
buy
down
her
on
last
the
car,
streets
and she bought it very quickly. We went to see it in the afternoon, and after dinner, we went over in the dark and got it. And so we were driving in 2 cars home. Well, then before long, we had to go to the station where they test your exhaust. And she was driving in one car, and I was in the other. And I had never noticed what a terrible driver she was until I was following her.
Yikes.
And I thought, oh dear.
I used to just shut my
But
eyes.
she quit voluntarily. Nobody
Yeah.
forced her to, so I think she got scared of getting off of Lee Avenue down Lee Road.
Yeah,
down
that
near
turn.
Dundee.
Or she was once driving home from the city. This story just kills me. And there was this huge snowstorm, and the entire tollway where Kennedy Expressway, it was completely shut down. And people had to abandon their cars. I don't know how long ago it was, 35 years ago, let's say, or 30 years ago. And so, so her car was just, along with everyone else's car, was just abandoned, and she was like underneath a viaduct or something.
I
That,
thought
and
didn't she get down to the end of Lee Road or something?
well,
Sure,
no,
but
like
that was
some
another
guys
time, I
just
don't
like
know.
drove her home in a big truck. So we were kind of like, what? I don't remember how she went back and got her car. I know she called one of us to go do it. And the thought of her just being, it's just a riot. Like abandoning her car along with hundreds of other people.
Oh,
and
the
just
other
climbing in the truck with.
abandoned one is in the 40s. She and Helen were going to New York to do a concert,
Oh, yeah.
and a car stopped for some reason.
And they were late.
And they were late, of course, and stayed in Madison, and they just jumped out and said, the car was just sitting there in the middle of the intersection. They run off of the train, the policeman says, oh, wait, and Helen says, we'll be back in a week.
That is a good
Gone.
example of Sybil and Helen. Like, they were a riot.
Unstoppable.
They were a riot.
How often was Helen in the studio? Just on the filming days, or?
No, now and then she'd come and tell us to get our shoulders down,
Yeah, exactly.
or
Posture and.
a few things like that.
No, I think some of the most magnificent photos that Helen took were outside. Were the ones she took of
Yes,
movement
we haven't really
outside.
talked about Sybil and dancing in nature, which she
Yes.
did a lot.
And there's some fabulous series of photos of her dancing. They're films too. I'm thinking of the still photos that were just magnificent. Yeah.
The thing about Helen's photography that we have discussed a lot as a board is that Helen's photography is unspeakable, unbelievable, but it's also here. This is the picture Helen took, which is unchanged from when Helen took it and then developed it, which is the other part of the art. And
She had a dark room down in the basement.
yeah, and
she
it was
would-
particular. There's gazillion negatives, but only a few that she thought were worthy of even making into prints. And then the whole dance side is so ethereal, and it's really interesting that. And both of them were just such geniuses in their great respect for one another. Art, I mean
Artists.
it's just, and they would gather artists in their home, and they tried to recreate like the salon idea.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't think we could ever
And
finish
we
this
always had
conversation.
tea.
Yeah.
Tea was a ritual,
Get us started, yeah.
absolutely a ritual.
How did you each, in your own way, when you came to this, or how did you know this was special? As Toby, you say I wasn't a dancer, I didn't know. How
Well-
did you know this was, if someone says, can you shovel snow off my roof, I'm not necessarily gonna stick around for years. But this was,
We've been on the board for like 35 or 40.
So you
Since
were around before
1985.
that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
how
then
did
many
you know
years
that
before.
the work was important? Did you have a sense of the larger dance community?
No.
No.
No, but I always was interested in dance, and I took dance in college, and I was interested in that. I didn't, when she introduced herself to me at Northwestern, when I was a 20-year-old, no, I didn't know who she was, but I soon found out.
Well, as a non-dancer, she began to show me some of the videos of her dancing. And even as a non-dancer, I knew this was out of the ordinary.
Special.
This was superb. And then when I saw that first Art Institute, and she wore this loose beige slacks, big legs, and flowing. And she just gave this program and showed slides and talked about things, and then she began to demonstrate these things. And
Oh my God.
I thought, she is really something. And that's when I said that she's writing this little biography of Helen, and I said, Sybil, somebody should be doing your biography.
You know, it's interesting. I think the board has started to do its work, and I, as I confessed earlier, I didn't know who Sybil was, and I was a producing director of a place called Mo Ming for many years, bringing in Meredith Monk and bad boy Mark Morris when he was nobody, you know, all kinds of people. I didn't know who Sybil was. Now, Sybil was known by the North Shore, where she gave classes and so forth, and there was pockets of people who knew her. I don't know how many of the dancers I was producing knew her, but I think as a board, we've not only found those people, but we've begun to really get who she is out there a lot more.
And Carol, when you say you saw those videos and knew it was something special, what was it about the choreography or the films that?
It was just her movement, her dancing, what she was doing. It was, I mean, I had seen dance. Hanya Holm used to come to Colorado Springs in the summer, which is where I grew up, and I didn't see her often. I think I probably saw her once, but I knew a lot about her and had seen films. But I don't know. It just jumped out. You just knew this was not ordinary dancing.
And we, as a company member, we hardly ever saw her dance. We would, often the company would do a piece, and then we were changing clothes, and then Sybil would do a solo, and we would have to sneak in the back of the theater and see it for the first time. And it was always special.
Well, her imagination was, she did different things. I mean, you would come back and expect that she's going to do something like what she did before, maybe it'd go a little beyond, but it's totally different. And because she had the ability to have the whole year to think and do things.
Or more.
Or more.
It wasn't a yearly
She-
performance. It was whenever the heck she
But
felt like
But
it.
in the first year she was in Chicago, she would go back to New York once a year and do a concert. And according to the reviews, everybody in the dance world would come and they want to see what she's doing. And then it got, after she wouldn't go to New York anymore, the reviewers and even some of the people would come here to see what she was doing. So I think this is.
John Martin would
Well,
come
John
out.
Martin followed her all the way through, and so did, even
That other guy.
maybe more importantly, the other critic, whose name I'll think of in a minute.
Walter Terry.
Walter
Yes.
Terry, yeah, Walter
Phew.
Terry.
He
They,
sat right over there and did an interview.
but the fact, well, we interviewed some people in New York a couple of years ago, and I interviewed a person who wrote for dance a lot, and she said, we didn't see her enough. We did not see her enough, and after she left New York, those of us in New York we lost track of her. So she's really
But
forgotten.
it's sort of what she wanted.
Well, she chose this way to work, and this is the consequence.
Right, exactly. But that's what she wanted to do.
Right, but she deserves better.
I
She
know.
deserves to be
That's-
known, which is
that's
what
why we're
keeps us
here.
going, I think.
I want to ask, before you leave, Toby, I just want to ask you, were you in the company when John was in the company?
Oh, yeah.
Because we haven't
So
talked,
he and
Chad
I-
Neumeier was in her company then, and he just did the opera at the Lyric and dedicated it to her, so I was just gonna kind of get
Yeah,
that.
John and I joined at the same time, and, well,
Well,
there it goes.
she said turn it off and turn it on.
So John Newmeyer
Who's
and
that?
I joined the company at the same time in 1960,
Mm.
and he would come down from Milwaukee, and because he was in school there, and we'd meet on the train tracks, and Sybil and Helen would pick us up, and we would come rehearse. And he was just in the company for 2 years, for when we worked on this Fables and Proverbs concert.
How did she connect with him?
She knew
Father
Priest,
Walsh.
Father
yeah,
Walsh up in
recommended
Milwaukee.
him, yeah.
Brought him down.
And Father Walsh said, I've got this really unusual dancer. He should be studying with you. And so Sybil,
Did she recognize that he was special?
oh yeah, I mean, that was not hard.
Yeah.
You can see it in the photos, even the still photos, you can just see
Yeah.
it.
Right.
But I mean, for what he just said, he would come from Milwaukee. Masao would come from Michigan to come to rehearsal 3 times a week. It was like we would do it. We made the pilgrimage to that studio through like
Yeah.
like letter
That's great.
deliverers. Snow, rain, nothing stopped us. There was, of course, no air conditioning, you know, who cared? You just wanted to be in her presence. Sometimes you would be like, oh my gosh, I gotta get up and go to work in the morning.
gotta
It'd be
get
like
up and go to work.
11:30 at night.
Thank you, Toby.
Yeah,
But-
you, Toby, so
I think you have to excuse
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I guess like, you know,
Guys,
Well,
listen
thank
to
you
it.
all.
I probably talked too much.